Hey guys, you're watching the Best Practices Show, where we take a look at the best business practices from the best dental practices all over the world. And one of the questions I always get is Superdentist, is that concept dead or alive? So I've got four of my favorite experts from Team Winnepeg on today on the Best Practices Show. You do not want to miss this. So do me a favor, grab a pen and hit the share button. We'll see you in a second. Hey guys, welcome back to the Best Practices Show. Thank you so much for watching. Absolutely love the comments and the feedback you guys are giving. And we're deep into season 2 now. We shot 85 episodes in the first season. Over 16,000 of you have subscribed, and almost 20,000 of you are listening on iTunes. So thank you very much for tuning in. And today we're going to examine a hot, controversial topic and present all sides of the argument, hopefully, on the Superdentist. So a couple show notes. Now, we are shooting this live on Facebook. So if you're watching this and you're watching it live, do me a favor, just add a question to the feed and I will ask the experts themselves. Or if you're watching this later on, feel free to add a question to the feed and we'll make sure that we get back to you with the right answers, because we want you to get the most out of this. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the guests that I have. These guys guys and gals, have all been great friends of mine as I've gotten a chance to see some of the best that dentistry has to offer. We met years ago, probably 10 years ago at the Seattle Study Club Symposium. You guys are rock stars in the world of restorative dentistry, specialty dentistry, treatment planning. And Dr. Paresh, Shah, you and I have been friends for a long time. So Paresh, can you do me a favor and just, if people haven't heard of you or haven't seen you speak, can you do me a favor and just introduce the rest of this amazing team and how you guys work together before we examine the topic?
Sure. These three characters are really good friends of mine. We practice in the same city in Winnipeg. Tim and I are classmates, so we go back almost 30 years. And Rodrigo and Hoda are two specialists that I've got to know over the last 5-6 years. So Tim Dumore with the red glasses is our orthodontist, and Rodrigo Cuhna is an endodontist from South America. Now he's been practicing and teaching in Winnipeg. And Hoda Hosseini is a periodontist that just moved back to Winnipeg just recently from Southern Ontario.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now we're going to examine we were talking before we went live. This is such a hot topic. Now here was the question that I presented. I thought, and I feel strongly as I get a chance to speak to a lot of dentists out there, that the Superdentist concept, sometimes it looks like a fad or feels like a fad. And you said, no, it isn't. Now let's flesh that out. And I want to present both sides of it. First of all, it starts with kind of defining what a Superdentist is, because I do get that question. People say, what is that? You know? So you guys define it. What's your definition, or all of your definitions on that concept?
Tim, while you got a connection, go for it.
Well, I mean, we were talking earlier, and there was some conversation about what kind of connotation you want to put on Superdentist. So you can look at it different ways, but generally speaking, it's a practitioner, maybe a solo practitioner, a small group practice practitioner who embraces the idea that you want to know as much about as many disciplines as possible, and in many cases render that treatment. So maybe you further your education in all the disciplines so that you're a more well-rounded dentist. I would take that as a baseline. Now, from that point, it can vary, I think, a little bit. So it could be that you're because you're more knowledgeable and you've got a better knowledge base in dentistry in general, that you're better able to identify problems and even determine which patients might benefit from specialist care. And you become the dentist that has excellent results because you work with other people in an interdisciplinary fashion. The other side of the coin, the way I see it, at least others might disagree, but I see dentists sometimes who, to a fault, will keep everything in house and maybe not recognize that there's probably someone out there that can provide some of that care to a better standard than what they're able to do. And I think that's where sometimes that's where the negative connotation can come from, because, maybe you got bills to pay, or maybe you just got a big ego. That's part of it too sometimes. I mean, all of us are guilty of that sometimes, I suppose. But for better or for worse, sometimes it's better for your patients if you let other people have a hand in helping produce a result.
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. Now, I want to just clarify something. Tim is an orthodontist, and he is at his cabin drinking a beer with limited Wi-Fi while these three others are working. So if you're thinking about being an orthodontist, it's a pretty amazing career, wouldn't you say?
I had to put on a shirt.
Right.
Say that again?
Right. We're still debating whether or not you're wearing pants. So, Paresh, add some context to the concept, because Tim, I totally agree with what you said. But what did you say, Paresh, before we got started that I thought it was just a great point?
Well, when you said you think that, what did you say? You said, well, I'm not sure the Superdentist is going to be around as much, and I said I totally disagree. I think it's going to be more. And Tim kind of explained it really well. You can take two connotations. The bottom line is, out there in our profession, the whole term super dentist is related to the fact that, you got a group of dentists, or you've got a specific dentist that feels they can, or they whether they feel or they have the capabilities, but they're choosing to practice all disciplines, or as many of the disciplines as possible, under one roof. And I tend to agree with Tim. I think there's still, and look, I'm a GP, and I could probably say that I'm a former super dentist, or reformed. I think more and more they're going to try to do as much as they can. And how do we maybe work to help mentor and nurture these relationships so that it's more symbiotic with all disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Dr. Cuhna, you had a great thought on that. Share that thought. I love it.
Well, I think that what we were discussing, I think it goes a lot with what time of your career you're at. I think that usually when you graduate, you had the opportunity to work with all the disciplines, and usually you're pretty confident that you can tackle all the cases. I think that slowly as time goes by, and I always have as my cutoff the 5 years, I think everyone is successful until they graduate, until they have their 5th year after they graduate. That's when the failure starts coming back. And when you start looking at these cases and you start thinking about if you should still be doing these cases or not, I think it's not about doing all the disciplines. I think it's very important for you to know your limits. I mean, you can still work with all the specific areas of dentistry. I think you just have to be very selective with which case you're going to tackle or not. So I'm not saying that you cannot be doing root canals. I have the opportunity to talk to several GPs and give hands-on courses. And I like to stress them a lot, saying, look, you can do endo. Just be sure that you screen the case and that you're confident that that case was meant for you to treat. I think that's more important than anything else. So knowing what you don't know and knowing which case should be suitable for you or not, I think that's the most important piece of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm. And Hoda, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's exciting. It's like, quite honestly, I feel, this whole idea of super dentists, or people who are excited so much about their profession that they want to do more and more different type of procedure and learn more. That's the exciting part of it. Because I feel the more trained my referrals are, the more exciting conversations we have and better cases I get referred once we have those discussions. So I think that part of it, as Tim was explaining, is very, very exciting. Yeah, I mean, the other flip side of the coin is that sometimes when the referral or hasn't really gone and done their due diligence to really treatment plan the case or diagnose the case well before involving themselves in the treatment, then yes, there are some troubles that we have to fix and we have to work together. I think from my perspective is that I would love to support my super dentist in their trade and be there for mentorship purposes. So I always tell them, hey, I'm available to you. If you have any question, I'll support you. I'll teach you how to do the procedure well. And that's the part I play in their career. And then I am also there when things go south so that we can still work toward the best benefit of the patient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I love this. I just love this debate because, again, it's often a dangerous place where we start to characterize the younger generation or anything like this. And I feel like I was no different because when I was 25, no one could tell me anything. I had to figure it out. But use the word failure and how much of self-awareness really plays a role into this and how fast you become more and more self-aware of like what you're good at. I feel like at my age, the word that's most important is just joy. I want to spend my time doing things that I find the most joy in. But how does it play a role in the rest of restorative dentistry? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Oh man, like failure or joy or both?
Or both.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Rodrigo. It's that whole self-awareness thing starts coming in. Everyone's a little bit different, but I tend to agree. I think in that 5 to 8 year period, that's when things start coming in. Yeah, I think it's a lot more challenging for a lot of the younger dentists, like over the last few years and the next few years coming out, just because of the debt load that they're in and some of those burdens that we just didn't face, 15, 20 years ago or 25 years ago. So that was a lot different. So, I think even when you're coming into this profession, and we're not unique. I mean, it's the same if you go into accounting, engineering, some of the other professions, you're faced with the same thing, the legal profession. So that's, hoping that self-awareness comes in. And I think part of it is just related to, finding the right, man, I always go back to mentors and groups to collaborate with, because as soon as you start finding like-minded people, there's a sense of a comfort that you can have there, that you can actually start realizing you're not on an island by yourself, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And Rodrigo brought up one good point about, Tim, one of our best friends is Ken Sheck, right? And he always says, hey, you don't know what you don't know. And Rodrigo just alluded to the same thing. And just when you're hanging out with that same crowd, you might all of a sudden be a little more self-reflective and then start looking at what makes you happy rather than just worrying about what pays the bills. Yeah. It's a harsh thing to say, but the reality is it's there.
Can I add something to what you just said, Paresh? Just flipping the coin here and showing the specialist side of everything. Like, I don't know how many times I had cases, and I know that Hoda, probably Tim can also give me their feedback. I had patients that were referred to me after someone started a root canal.
Right.
And it wasn't a case suitable for them. The patient was referred. I don't know how many times the patient was upset and they came with this comment. Look, if they weren't prepared for this, why did they start in?
Exactly.
Some patients, Paresh, come to me and say, I'm going to be referred to another dentist. So trying to do something that maybe you were not trained for ended up hurting your practice now because you just lost a patient.
Absolutely.
And so we think patients might not say that straight to the GP, but in our chair, you can see the frustration of, okay, why didn't he refer me to start with? I don't know what you guys think, Hoda. Tim.
No, go ahead, and then I can elaborate on that.
Yeah, I see that a lot unfortunately. I see it in a domain of implants, unfortunately, and PeriImplantitis, because now the lack of proper implant diagnosis and treatment planning and placement has led to this phenomena of PeriImplantitis, which is totally not true. It's the wrong diagnosis. It becomes very tough as a specialist too, because you have a personal relationship with that referring doctor, and that's why they trusted you and they send you this trouble patient. And now the patient is angry at that doctor, so you really got to play the devil's advocate here and try to mend that relationship at the same time, knowing full well that had your referral consulted with you prior to initiation, this case could have gone so smoothly for everybody involved.
So, and you know what, Tim and I have had this conversation about other people as well as ourselves. And Tim, you know, where it's one of those things where at some point in time, as a specialist and a restorative dentist, you've got to look inside and go, okay, well, these are the types of people I want to work with. And actually, just as, you know, there are a lot of specialists that'll just go, well, I don't do anything about it because they're a good referral. I get a lot of volume from them. But at some point in time, you got to go to yourself, well, you know what, maybe the volume's there, but I'm not enjoying the work that I'm doing. Maybe I should cut that off. Just in the same light, the other way that, you know, you send to a referral and you're just not getting the work you wanted. And after you got to say, look, I like the person, but I need to find another specialist. So, you know, I think it's still, the onus still comes on all of us to try and have that conversation. And if the conversation isn't working, maybe it's time to pull the plug on that dentist and move on, because life's too short. Perfect. Another example today. This happened just half an hour ago. And person comes in and this young kid has braces on and they're going like, hey, can you just tell me what's going on with his tooth? And there's this impacted canine that's coming in sideways. And I just assumed they were seeing Tim because I had referred there. And I look in the chart and they're going, nope, they decided to go somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, so I'm looking in the document center, no documentation except Tim's consultation. And they've been in ortho now for a year. I have no idea what the treatment plan is. They're in pain. There's a tooth that needs to come out. I don't want to touch it because I don't know if it's part of the treatment plan. You call the office and they're like, well, we don't know. We'll have to find out. We'll get you a letter. They're already a year in treatment. So it's a tough call, but I think all of us as providers have to take that onus on ourselves. And I don't envy you guys because you'll see it more than I will.
Mm-hmm. And Paresh, you bring up a very good point. I think maybe in general, I feel that there is certain degree of complaint from my general practitioners, doctors, who say that the lack of communication from their referring or from their specialist is the reason why they changed or is the reason why they don't work with that person. And I guess that the onus is on us. If we are not communicating well, if we are not picking up the phone, and if we are not trying to reach out, then maybe we are contributing to the whole phenomena of superdentists. Because if they can't work with us, then guess what? They still have to provide treatment for their patients. So they try to do it themselves.
Yeah, and Tim, yeah. I think Tim got mad, Paresh, that he found out that you didn't have a patient going over to his office. So
I know.
Well,
it's like just
he's very temperamental like that. So we don't want to upset him. So, Rodrigo, let me ask you the question that is quite possible in the future. Should endodontists be placing implants? What do you think about that?
Oh,
well, I don't think that's something that we are looking forward to, like in the future. I think that's happening now. We have several, maybe the majority of the grad programs in North America, especially in the United States, they are teaching single implants in the endo grad program. Actually, when I wrote my boards exam in Canada here, I had questions on implants. And then I found out that the two Canadian schools, they actually teach basic implants for their students. So I think that's something that's happening now. The question is, do I agree with that or not? Well, I agree with it at a certain extent. I mean, as long as, like, let's look at both sides. You are doing an apical surgery, you're raising a flap, you're doing an exploratory surgery, and you find a crack on that tooth. What am I going to do? I'm going to suture the case, send it back. Why can't I, with everything raised, if I have the proper training for that, please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you still have to have the proper training. Why can't I try to deal with that situation at that point? If you ask me, do you place implants? I don't place implants. However, if you're properly trained, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be doing a single unit implant as long as you know how to do bone graft and all those different steps. Now, then the other side, the endodontist also has to know their limits. They're not going to be doing a full mouth reconstruction, sinus lift, and things like that. So summarizing everything, yes, if it's something really straightforward, something that they feel comfortable with, a case that was already in the middle of a surgery, something went wrong, and an implant has to be placed, I don't think there's any problem with an endodontist doing it, as long as they know what they're doing. Okay, Hoda, I'm ready.
It's going to sound terrible because I'm a periodontist and he's an endodontist, but I'm going to present something else. And this is nothing to me being perio, because I sometimes believe when the tooth is hopeless and I'm in the midst of perio surgery, just because I'm there and I can place the implant doesn't necessarily mean that I should go ahead and do it, because the implant is a prosthetic treatment plan. The prosthetic treatment plan needs to be in place before we place the implant. Maybe implant, even though the tooth was great and we hoped to have been able to keep the tooth in that location with the same load, but the implant may not be the best option for that patient. So unless I have a good, solid prosthetic treatment plan prior to my initiation of the surgery, and I know if this tooth is found hopeless, it is a good idea to place a dental implant in that site, then yes, then it's a good idea. As Rodrigo is saying, the patient's already frozen, we are halfway through the surgery, and we have the proper training to go ahead and do it. Why not? But if all of that steps haven't been taken, if the treatment plan is not solid, if the prost has not been consulted, then maybe just saving the patient from an extra surgery is not really saving them from extra headache long term.
I think just to kick in, if you have a good interdisciplinary team, you've talked about all the possible outcomes before you've started the procedure, and you can go into the surgery knowing that you can do that, and it will be acceptable.
Perfect.
Right.
Absolutely.
Good point.
I missed. I cut out for a bit there. You were saying something, Paresh, and it wasn't.
We were saying everyone should be able to do ortho. Everyone.
No, we were commenting on how upset you get when you find out things that you were not aware of, that Paresh is already referring patients away from you. So
I was not referring. That's why I said it very clearly.
Then he made fun of your glasses online too. That was terrible. So
I know.
No, that's the mark of good friends. It's always fun. So what are some other, I'm always curious about this question. What are some of the trends that you will see? So if it is somewhat alive and those are the trends that you guys see or as considerations, what do you expect to see 2, 3, 4 years from now?
From just in what way? Like in dentistry in general, or
just dentistry in general? And let me I'll just add a little context to this, because Hoda, you offered this up. I think technology and what you see in videos, now everybody can take a course anywhere. I mean, you can take a course anywhere on anything, and you can do it right now online. And so does that complicate it? Does it help it? Also with the added compounding influx of new technology like DSD, we have the ability to see more. Does that help the profession, help this concept? Does it take away from it? Tell me your thoughts.
I think in general, being more informed is a great thing. Being more exposed to different ideas, different ways to doing things is fantastic. And the easier that information can be accessed, whether it's online, whether it's by taking courses, it's a really good thing. When the information of a whole population is elevated, then we have no other place to go than up, right? So I think that part of it I really love. One thing that I don't see much talked about in all these little 5 minutes videos online or even on these courses, the weekend courses, is the complications and how the complication happen and what to do when the complication arises. So it can be a good thing, but then if we don't talk about the flip side of the coin, that's not such a great thing either. So raising awareness and information about the things that could go wrong, I think that should be part of the equation as well.
I think just to add to what Hoda was saying, take for example the idea of going to a dental school. So Paresh and I went to dental school. It was an accredited program. You're taught things that are, some thought is put into the curriculum so that you get a well-rounded education. Nowadays, with information being so readily available, you can study whatever you want, and it might be the best course ever, or it could be crap. So if you're not careful and you learn, you create your own poor curriculum for yourself, well, that's not going to work out well in the long run. So I think you have to put some diligence into making sure that you're learning good information. Otherwise, it's you may not be any farther ahead.
Mm-hmm.
There's ortho courses out there that are great, and there's some that are crap.
There's it's like Rodrigo, your study club. I mean, you present articles like several times a week, and they're not all perfect. Some of them are good, some of them aren't, but there's up for conversation and debate, right?
Yep. No, I think and I like controversial topics, and I think maybe because of my academic background, I like to be evidence-based and I like to search the literature. Just jumping on what Hoda said and Tim just also mentioned, those online courses or those 5-minute case presentations or something like that, that's not enough. What is the literature saying about that? Do we have other cases? If you show one case, that doesn't mean that all the cases go the same, right? That's right. One case. What does the literature? Can I do this? Can I repeat this in the majority of the cases? Do we have enough evidence showing that this specific procedure works? So I think that one of the things that I would love to see GPs doing more is reading more scientific literature, not lousy journals, reading good peer-reviewed journals. I think that's something that we should be thinking about and stimulating more the GPs doing.
Agreed. And you know what? This all fits perfectly well to your question right at the beginning, Kirk. You think that this is all gone. I don't, because and I 100% agree with all of them. With everybody, and I think we're on the same page. It's just the reality is the information is coming through a fire hydrant really fast right now. It's not going away because now we have all the major dental companies that are setting up their own online education on their own portals. You know that. Right. Mm-hmm. Within the next year and a half, 2 years maximum, we're going to have Amazon that's going to be providing us with all our dental supplies now. Not our equipment, but that's coming way sooner. So it's happening real fast. So how do we turn the tide, or at least slow the tap down a little bit? It's by following some of the suggestions that these friends of mine are bringing up. I don't think we can change everybody. We're not going to be able to. But in our little world, whatever we can, with the people that we have direct contact with through Seattle Study Club, through our own study clubs, through our network of referrals and referring to, that we try and reach out to as many. I mean, that's been my approach over the last number of years. My goal has been, Rodrigo, I mean, you know me, you've tried to get me at the school. There's things that I won't even get into, but the reality is, if I'm sitting and I'm teaching and lecturing and I got 100 people in the audience, but I can reach that one and I've made a difference in their life, that means I've reached thousands of patients over their career. Mm-hmm. And that's my way of doing it. And I think you guys have similar things. So it's one way to do it.
Yeah. I think maybe the answer too, one of the answers is it doesn't matter where this heads up because it may continue. It's just picking where you want to be.
Exactly.
If all those trends happen like we predict them to happen, the question becomes where you want to be. And I want to ask you guys if you agree with this. Gosh, a dentist made me watch this show called Botched. Do you know what Botched is? Have you guys heard of this?
Yep.
Okay, Botched is, and I just saw the first episode. It's terrible. You got to watch it. Okay, so it's basically plastic surgery that's gone really bad, like really bad. Now, I watched 5 minutes of it, and I'm not a plastic surgery. Maybe I should be. I don't know. But I was thinking, I watched 5 minutes of that, and I thought, you only want an expert that knows what they're doing after watching 5 minutes of that. Like, it's horrifying. And their whole purpose of that show is they're positioning themselves as experts that fix other people's work. Now, tell me if you agree with this. Some of the top restorative dentists I've known in 20 years, they'll say this to me in a sidebar conversation. They'll go, this is sad, but I want to tell you the nature of my practice. 70 to 80% of what I do is just redoing other people's stuff. Like maybe that's what I'm called to do. I don't know, but really a lot of this, and so that's not a conviction or a judgment of other dentists. I just think, there's going to be a place for the expert always. Would you agree?
Yes.
I mean, wait. Here's another question. Are any of your practices like really slow? Are you guys just like looking at the schedule going, man, I don't know. I got nothing coming in. Because of DSOs and Superdentists, like they're taking all my patients. Would you agree with that statement or not?
No.
I'm pretty glad I'm on holidays.
Yeah.
Okay.
Life is busy.
No, we're busy. We're busy here, which is good.
Winnipeg is a good place to be.
Yeah.
But in practice in Ontario, yes.
No, it's not, Hoda. No, it's not.
I have been there in December. No, I was.
Hoda, don't worry. Hoda doesn't know what she's saying. Hoda, it's not good.
Rodrigo's starving.
Winnipeg is terrible.
Yeah, my last patient was a polar bear. Yeah, and he didn't have insurance. It was terrible. I'm going to have to talk to the caribous to see if he can pay for his treatment.
I used to have hair before I went to Winnipeg in the winter. Now it's all gone. So. So.
Now, you were saying, Kirk, earlier, you made a comment about what brings you joy, what brings you satisfaction in your practice. So just imagine you're a dentist and you're running a comprehensive practice, and if things are going great, that's great. But if there's a case that you maybe bit off more than you could chew, when like that patient comes in 50 times to get corrections done, and they're not happy, like that's going to sap your strength. And some of those cases you'd think maybe that would have been a better case to work with some other people to get a better result. And then the patient comes back at the end of the day with a great result because Paresh and Rodrigo and Hoda have all worked together to make a good result. And the patient reflects positively on you. I mean, I think at the end of the day, that's going to make you more satisfied in your career. I mean, I'm not saying you don't do ortho, but if you're going to do ortho, like Hoda was saying, pick your cases and know what's going to be successful, what's not. It'd be miserable, I think.
Yeah.
And I Tim and Rodrigo and Paresh and I, we all have the same mindset that we don't mind helping. We really don't. Just ask. If you have a case and you're not sure whether this is too much or how to do it, just ask. And I personally don't mind sharing. I'm more than happy to teach you how to do it. At the end of the day, the more we work together, the better practitioners we're all going to be. There are things that I don't know either. So I don't mind people asking.
And not only that, if you look at endo, Kurt, 80% or maybe 85% of the root canals done in North America, they're done by GPs. Let's say that tomorrow GPs don't do more root canal treatment. Are we going to be able to deal with all those patients? No, we're not. So there's no problem this is my personal opinion. I have no problem with general dentists doing root canals as long as they, once again, screen their cases, as long as they know what they're doing, and as long as they don't jump on a case where they don't have the equipment and the technology that should be used for that case. That's my opinion.
Okay, can I ask the three of you a question? Here's one of the things. Okay, I think we're a little unique in our city compared to some of the other bigger cities? I mean, Tim, you were in San Francisco, and I think there are a lot of specialists in the larger centers where they don't necessarily take Rodrigo's approach. And I know you and I have talked for years that you feel, hey, you know what? It's okay if my referrals are doing some of these things. Let's just work together. I don't mind them, I don't mind mentoring them on that, but also know your limits. So how do you guys, kind of promote that? Because it's not as prolific or as prominent out there for GPs. I mean, for specialists to actually say, it's okay for some of them to place some implants and do some endos and do some ortho. I mean, you know that, we hear it all the time. So how do you talk to your peers to maybe make them see things a little bit differently?
I personally want to straight out. It's okay for me to want to do your own surgeries. If you want, I will help you and I will teach you how to do it. And
right, but what do you do with the rest of your profession as well to try and make some changes?
I can change my tone, and I hope that the colleagues can also hear the message. And as you say, the times are changing, and yes, the Superdentists are here. We can either support and mentor them for the better and best of for improving our profession, because we do also have an ethical obligation toward our patients. If I keep my knowledge to myself and allow my Superdentist colleague to, without training, without education, screw up the cases and then send their mess to me, then I didn't do anybody a favor, and least of all the patient. So by sharing my knowledge, by being open to teaching them and training them and mentoring them, then I can help them as well as help my profession and save face.
Let me give you an example. Recently, maybe a couple of months ago, I got a phone call from a dentist maybe 45 minutes outside of Winnipeg in a smaller town, and she's taking an ortho course and needed to have some cephs taken, and wondered if I would take cephs for her, which is kind of an odd thing because these patients are coming to a specialist practice for a ceph. But anyways, I said, sure. We talked a little bit about mentoring, and I gave her the example or two examples. One was, Paresh and I had a classmate, this is probably more than 10 years ago, but one of our classmates had taken an ortho course and was doing some ortho, and he wanted some help, and I said, sure. So we met at my office probably 5 or 6 times, and he showed up every time with records that were reasonably complete and of reasonable quality, which I have to say is sometimes unusual for dentists doing ortho. They're not necessarily up to speed in terms of how to get good records, and that's something that you can learn. But he would show up with good records, and he would have notes, and he would say, he'd read his question, he'd think for a second, then he would say, okay, so in this case here, this is what I think I'm seeing, and he would have put some thought into what he thought the proper answer was, and what do you think? And I asked him questions, we had a discussion, and it was a great experience, and I felt that he was thoughtful, and his patients would be well served. If he got into trouble, he was going to ask for help, and that was great. There's another gentleman around the same time, an older gentleman who came in and wanted to meet with me for some assistance, and he showed up with crappy records, and he would ask a question, and I'd say, like, well, okay, so in this situation, what do you think is the problem? He goes, I have no idea, that's why I'm talking to you. Okay, so I think this is the problem. How do you think we might fix that? No clue. And I thought, good Lord, and his fees were the same as my fees.
Oh, no.
And I thought, well, so like that, I think so. To get back to what Paresh was saying, or maybe you were saying, but I think it's okay, like, train yourself, or Hoda was saying, find someone that you can work with. And so for me, it's upon me to say, look, I'm here to work with you, but it's a two-way street. I'm going to help you if you want to do some ortho, but you got to put the work in. You can't just tell people you're going to do braces on them and then see if you can bail it out later. That's probably not a good long-term strategy.
No.
Just saying. Okay, so I just thought I'd throw that in there because it's one of those things I get fired up about sometimes.
Rodrigo, should everyone have a scope? No, I'm just kidding.
I think so. I think so. Yeah, you touched a good point. I think that's a good way to start a good root canal. It is.
Yeah. I got a scope.
Yeah. Oh, man.
That's awesome. Well, any closing thoughts you guys would have on this argument? Because it's a good debate. It's a really good debate. And again, I wanted to just kind of temper this or color this. We're not trying to say one is bad, good, different, or the other. Just try to present both sides of it and the understanding so people can truly make their own decisions. And I just want to say this as I ask you closing thoughts. I mean, dentistry is an incredible profession. You really can't fail unless you do something silly. It's, in our country, it's the top profession in the United States. It's also one of the most profitable businesses in North America. I mean, so you can't really screw up. And the cool part is you can screw up and you can still make money in this. So that's where we find these gray areas sometimes. But any closing thoughts you guys have on the Superdentist concept?
Well, in my point of view, I'm just going to rephrase it again. In my opinion, a super dentist is the one that does everything to a limit of a general dentist. So if he knows his limit, trust me, he will be a super dentist.
Yeah, I like that.
Well played,
I agree.
Rodrigo.
I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'll Hoda, you have any other thoughts on this?
Well, I honestly, at the beginning of our conversation before we came live, I was just asking, when we say super dentist, are we talking positive or negative? And as Rodrigo is saying, that as long as you do things within limits of your training, and regardless of at what time, what age, where you took that training, as long as it is a good and solid training, then the super part of the super dentist can be a very positive word. So I'm hoping that all the colleagues out there who are calling themselves super dentists are super duper. And I work with all my dentists, and all my dentists are super dentists.
Yeah. It's it's not a negative or a positive connotation at all. It's just the reality. It's a term that's in our profession now, and whether it's been coined from the specialty side or the general practice side, the bottom line is more and more dentists are going to be doing as much as they can within their practices. And again, the whole, the best thing that we can do in terms of sharing and disseminating knowledge is by, hanging out with like-minded people that are progressive and forward-thinking, taking the appropriate advanced education beyond just what you get in school, reading literature, joining study clubs. And we all talk about all this stuff because we're part of all of those things. And so there's a light there, and it's a great light, and it's a great place and a great profession to be practicing dentistry. And we have a lot of young dentists coming out. We got another school that just opened up this year, right? Mm-hmm. So, a lot of young dentists are still coming out. So it's a matter of being able to provide all of them with as much support as possible.
Absolutely.
You can't fix everything, but you can do whatever you can within your little world.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Cool. Well, I really appreciate this, you guys. Now, if people have questions, they can reach out to you. They can also see more of this amazing team at the Seattle Study Club Symposium. You guys will be out there, which you cannot miss. If you've never been, you have to go. And you'll be out there, Paresh, and with the rest of the DSD team, and the day before it starts, which will be that Sunday. Any other ways to get a hold of you guys?
I think Ben's got our email addresses that are already posted.
Yep. And
and I think we're archived on your with other podcasts there, all of us. So
absolutely.
Right.
So you guys stay on for a second while we say goodbye to everybody. I just want to thank everybody for watching. If you found this valuable, do us a huge favor and hit the share button. Share this with your colleagues. And we love, love, love hearing from you about things that you want to see in upcoming episodes. And if there's things you want to see from this amazing team in Winnipeg, please let us know and I'll get them back. These guys are awesome. So, hey, until we see you next time, keep watching the Best Practices Show. You guys have a great evening.